Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister, said with moving eloquence,
"Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom."
This was the era when India was so poor and deprived after 200 years of British rule. It was also the era of the Cold War, where the entire world was shifted into two poles, the capitalist US and the socialist USSR. The choice fell upon Jawaharlal Nehru to decide the fate of this country, and he chose to start a non-alignment movement, wherein he proclaimed that he is not involved in anything that has to do with the Cold War. But on the economic front, he took a socialist stance. So in this video, we look at what the economic policies of Jawaharlal Nehru were and how it affected the Indian economy at that time. In the backdrop of the Cold War, the newly independent or the newly forming nations had two options: either to participate in the free market or the capitalist market and sell their products in the international market, to be open to the international market where they can sell and buy products from all countries, or to not do that, that is to be a closed economy. So the countries that chose open economy feared that their products would not be able to compete with the international market, where the advanced countries were also participating. But they could get a lot of support and financial aid from these countries because they participated. But in case of the closed economy, there was no outside trade possible, and the state saw to it that no products came into the country or no product went out of the country, or if something came in and out, it had a huge tariff rate imposed on it. Again, it fell upon the state to distribute or to not distribute the commodities and goods that were produced within the country, and therefore all the things that the country needed were produced within the country and it was distributed to. So closed economies did not have to compete with the international markets, they did not have to compete with the big players and lose all the time, and often USSR supported them and gave them financial aids because Cold War. As history would have it, all the closed economies would fail and they would have to eventually open up and become more liberal. This includes USSR and China and most closed economies except for one. And you guessed it right, it's North Korea. So how did closed economy work in India? That's what we are going to primarily look at in this video. The state or the government realized that we were doomed. We had enormous goals to achieve, obviously, to maintain our freedom and democracy, get the millions of people out of poverty, and to keep our cultural fabric intact, and also to maintain communal harmony in our land where there were loads of communities, religions, and languages, and so on. So for Nehru, who was a socialist, the solution seemed like socialism, where the state get to control everything. And under socialism, very much like how it was in USSR, the state would drive intensive industrialization along with a highly controlled market, which was expected to drive rapid growth in the economy. The 5-year plans began, just like how the 5-year plans were put in place in Russia. The first 5-year plan was not so much important, but the second 5-year plan, based on the Nehru Mahalanobis model, put a Marxist model of growth into action. First goal was rapid industrialization, along with the centralization of industry, which basically means that the state, the center, controlled all the industries that were set up and what kind of industries need to be set up. And bizarrely, we focused on heavy industry. And then there was import substitution. Growth should be combined by social justice, and they should be achieved in a way that made India self-sufficient. Imports were severely controlled and were subject in many cases to quantitative restrictions, and in all cases to very high tariffs, which at their peak had reached a maximum level of 350%. So basically, we largely ignored the huge population of illiterate people in this country, and we relied on industries that we had no idea how to operate, or in most cases just didn't work. We relied entirely on corrupt bureaucracy and corrupt industrialists, while closing up all trade and foreign investment, while also relying on USSR for economic growth. How does that sound to you? Jawaharlal Nehru went one step further. One thing is clear to me, that if we don't develop heavy industry here, then we either eliminate all modern things such as railways, airplanes and guns, or else we import them. But to import from abroad is to be slaves to foreign countries, and the consequences of that decision was not good. Basically, Nehru did not follow the industrialization process as a new country which was not doing very well economically should have done. Rather than focusing on producing final goods that could replace the external supply or the international supply, they should have focused on creating the raw materials for producing heavy industries in a later period. They should have focused on steel or machines to produce more factories. They should have also focused on probably agriculture or supporting the small scale industries that were there everywhere in the nation, who were also really starving. Given the meager amount of capital, scale of production in each product line within heavy industry still remains suboptimal. In parallel, light manufacturers were relegated to household and small enterprises, where they too remain subject to protection at suboptimal scale. So after an initial growth of 4%, the economy did not grow under the Nehru Mahalanobis model, and Nehru died, leaving behind an impoverished India with high government control on production and distribution, and of course high inflation. Indira Gandhi's regime followed, and she tried to solve the intense food crisis in this country by spearheading the Green Revolution. That was also a socialist agenda of controlling agriculture, dictating what farming and our food practices are. Most of us started to eat so much wheat and rice and maybe corn after Green Revolution. But Green Revolution, like the other 5-year plans, did not pan out very well. In some pockets, it may have helped the farmers and it may have helped to alleviate poverty or hunger. But India as a whole did not benefit from Green Revolution, and it only caused more problems than solved any. By 1990s, India was in deep crisis. The combination of long-term factors like industrial licensing, protectionist policies, restriction on foreign investment and domination of public sector undertakings, along with short-term factors like Middle East crisis, oil shock, stop in foreign remittance and NRI deposits, created a balance of payment crisis. And we had to seek the help of IMF and World Bank to just sustain ourselves. This was also the time that USSR disintegrated and socialism was failing wherever it was implemented. Just like all the other socialist countries at that time or after that or in the 2000s, India was also forced to liberalize, privatize and globalize its economy. In the new economic policy, IMF and World Bank asked India to open its market for international trade and to privatize almost all the sectors in the country. So these were all the major goals of the new economic policy which was brought forward by World Bank and IMF. Even though we did it out of a kind of desperation, it turned out to be one of the best things that happened to our economic growth. We finally started to slowly emerge out of the chains of poverty and deprivation that this country had gone through for decades even after independence. We came out of our intense economic crisis because of free trade, because of participation and support from international market and international players. We were also advancing into the IT sector. But obviously, as a nation, we still had to go a long way. After a decade itself, we started to be called as an emerging country because we were economically advancing. And 3 decades later, we are at a position where we have outrun UK. For the longest time, and whenever we study Indian economy, we usually blame ourselves or we blame the population for our economic crisis. We say that it is largely due to an illiterate section or due to social injustices or due to the population problem, that is too many people were being born in this country. These were all listed as causes for the economic crisis that just wouldn't go away. But we don't talk about socialism as a cause. We don't talk about closed economy and the intense control that the government had on agriculture and industrial sectors in this country, which kind of put chains on development. It was these faulty policies and schemes, and more importantly, the adoption of a socialist type of development that actually caused us to be impoverished for all this time. I don't think that the population or the people or the culture had to be blamed at all for our misfortune. Socialism has failed a lot of countries. Socialism has failed a lot of population in very horrific ways. And India, it never flourished under government control of trade. It always favored free trade and it always flourished under free trade. And that could be a reason why we never have succeeded in socialism. We don't want socialism in this country anymore, and we probably will never want to be socialist anymore. I hope you like this video. Did you previously know about the Mahalanobis model? And if you have, what are your thoughts on it? Please let me know. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I've published my first book, a novel named Life in a Ziploc Bag. It's the story of 4 kids living in a city with their unique life experiences. They are connected by the chaos in their lives, which are fueled by drugs, abuse, and isolation. I don't want to give it all away right here. You can check it out on Amazon or Flipkart. It's also available for direct buying. All these links are given in the description. If you are interested, please go and check it out and grab your copy right now. Thank you.